another tall person,
Yeah.
going to a bathroom stall and shutting the door and still being able to see over it.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing that happens for you a lot? I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
I've been head and shoulders above in a toilet stall. It is an American thing.
Yes, yeah, because the doors are so small.
What is that about, Josh? I want to
Yes.
hear, what do you nerd out about?
Oh, I nerd out about a lot of things. I'm a political junkie, like a lot of people, unfortunately, right now.
Are you sleeping?
No, not really, but I'm traveling so much I don't get to sleep anyway. I nerd out about, I mean, for the longest time I was a music nerd, but these days I don't have enough time to be a music nerd. I have 4 kids. And now I nerd out about all the things that my kids want to nerd out about, you know, because that's the time, that's like the connection that I get to have with them. And
You're
in this,
passing on your interests.
yeah, exactly. And in this, it's kind of the most fun thing. One of the most fun things about being a dad is like you're always kind of introduced to things you would never in a million years care about. And like right now, I've got young girls and they're obsessed with Taylor Swift, and so I'm always listening to Taylor Swift, took to the concert, and it directly correlates to this and this character who is nothing like, you know, a dad who would, well, nothing like me, but nothing like a dad who would go to an event like this, and just watching the way that he's interacting with this feels almost relatable, because that's something that we all go through as dads. So yeah, I nerd out about a lot of things. Name a thing and I nerd out about it, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like the butcher would absolutely be a very detached person. No, he's got interests. They're just
I
really
think his
deranged.
interests are really dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has a hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be the slogan.
Yeah.
What I do like about your portrayal of this character is masking.
Yeah.
And the sense of really putting something as a mask on out there for the world to see,
Sure.
but then saving a version of yourself that no one else really gets to see, or you keep it quite private.
Yes.
How relatable is that to other aspects of your life? Lady Revan in this movie as well?
My life, yeah. I mean, I think everyone has a mask, and everyone, not even just, it's not necessarily mask has a negative connotation to it. Everybody puts on a bit of a show to keep themselves from having to constantly explain why they're feeling as messed up as they're feeling, or confused, or, you know, like growing up is filled with lots of complicated things, and if we all just walked around being completely open about what we're feeling, it would be a very messy place.
Yeah.
And so we've all learned to kind of pretend that things are okay when they're not. So this is an extreme example of that, clearly, and his is very purposeful. But I can relate to. I mean, I think that every character that I've ever played has an exterior world and an interior world that don't exactly match up. You know, this is just much broader.
I love that. What was it like becoming a serial killer? Did you have to really do deep dives?
I had to do a lot of reading, because I had to, because the script was written as Knight wrote it, as it is in the script, as it is in the film. And I had to find a way to make all those disparate kind of seeming characteristics credible as one person. And so I just had to read until I found like examples of people that were so charming that they could convince, and this is a fact, and they could convince a journalist that they didn't do the things that they did, even though they're locked up in prison for the thing that they did, and all the evidence points to that. Like they have a way, if there's no morality at play, they're able to convince you of a lot of things that you probably wouldn't be convinced of by other people, because they just don't feel any guilt about it, about lying to you. So it's like, it's in a way, it's much easier for them to put on these roles. And what's interesting about this character, and why this day is so interesting, is that this is the day that Cooper figures out that facade that he's been playing for a long time actually has a real like hook inside of him. And maybe he's not just a monster. And that's a really bizarre kind of twisted sort of journey for a character to go on, which is way different than anything else that I've ever played, and way different than I've seen in movies, and especially in a movie that's fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like this is really cool character exploration, but in the midst of this fun thriller that is hopefully an audience, like kind of people will laugh, and people, you know, it's a cool thing to be a part of.
I want to wrap things up with one last question.
Sure.
It stood out to me like a sore thumb. Being another tall person,
Yeah.
going to a bathroom stall and shutting the door and still being able to see over it.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing that happens for you a lot? I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
I've been head and shoulders above in a toilet stall. It is an American thing.
Yes, yeah, because the doors are so small.
What is that about?
I don't know. I mean, I live in the UK now, and they do put big doors on, you know,
And no
from
gaps
top to
in
bottom.
the sides.
Yeah, no.
You are safe in there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I can't say. But I will say this, like, he was meant to be huge. Like, that was in the script. There's a couple of references to how strong he is and how big he is, and like, so I gained some weight for it. We put that big yellow jacket on, and I looked about 10 feet taller than the rest of the kids that were there, and that was kind of part of the deal, I think.
Saleka, because I am from Nerdist, I love asking for everyone, and I'm going to actually bar music from you for this one.
Okay.
What else do you nerd out about?
Physics.
Go on.
I don't know why, but I've always loved physics, and like quantum theory is like something that I'm really interested in, and kind of the concept of like how we experience things and whether they exist or not. So I'm kind of a physics nerd.
How'd you stumble into that one?
From school, I guess it was like, I always loved the arts, but I also liked science, and specifically physics. Biology kind of freaks me out a little bit, but physics was just always like another interest of mine, and now I just read books about it.
It is a nice thing where things make sense.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all there for a reason, which is why
Yes.
maths is really good as well.
Yeah.
It's like there can only be one number, one
Yes.
solution. I kind of like that.
Physics is like the opposite. It's like nothing is real, and you're confused about everything, but it opens your mind in a way.
Nothing's real. This moment.
Yeah.
Is it real? I like that. I actually loved in this movie, it was like the deconstruction of a pop star. And I
Yes.
really liked that your character was able to collaborate with other artists. And it was almost like a do's and don't guide of being a pop star.
Okay.
Tell me about these do's and don'ts.
I'm curious when you say do's and don'ts, what are you referring to? And
The brat who was complaining about the
Okay.
water and the type of milk in her coffee, that to me was just like, hey, we don't do that. Because it was such a juxtaposition to your character.
No, it's
Lady-
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely wanted to portray Lady Raven in, also, in opposed to that character, but also in Josh's character, where it's a person that's very disconnected from people and doesn't show anyone who he truly is and kind of is hidden. And then the pop star character as this kind of person who shows everyone who she is. Everyone feels connected to her. Everyone feels like they know her, and she kind of has a line to humanity in a way that's this beautiful thing where you're never alone, which is sometimes an overwhelming thing, but it can also be a beautiful thing. And so we really wanted to show that in her connection to everyone. And I think like being an artist does make you feel that way because you feel connected to people that you've never met, and it's like this amazing thing that kind of makes you feel like no one is an other, and everyone is, your neighbor, your friend, your sibling.
I also noticed that sometimes if you want an answer quickly, having a mass of people to connect with
Yes.
is a great way to do that. Yeah,
for sure.
So what is that like? Are you experiencing that more and more, people having access to you? Are you seeing the
Yeah.
pros and cons to this?
Yeah, I mean, I have nowhere near like the Lady Raven amount of fans. I was sort of imagining like a Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift kind of person.
I was actually going to ask
Yeah.
the breakdown. It felt like it was
Yeah.
like 35% Ariana Grande. What was the build up talking about physics,
Yeah.
the chemistry of the character? How would you build Lady Raven in parts of other pop stars?
I mean, I don't think the music or anything like that was really based on any specific person, but I think, taking notes of how artists interact on social media, these artists have a huge following and can connect with anyone at any time, which is a really interesting concept. And then the fan base, of course, Taylor Swift is such a huge conversation right now in her Eras tour, and just the kind of intensity with which fans arrive at her shows and feel the whole time, feel so connected to her. And what if you made a movie in that environment? So I think that was a big, just thought process there.
You wrote the songs for the movie.
Yes.
And in the movie, it was very apparent that everyone knows every single word to the song.
Yeah.
Was that like a drug for you, being a musician?
I mean, it was really interesting and emotional for me because I haven't really experienced that in real life to that degree, and so it was beautiful to see, the kids who I ended up feeling like I had a real connection to the kids that were in the audience in a way, because they came and they had heard the songs before, so they were singing along and they were really reacting to the performances, and some of them were like there for the whole concert while we shot, and so it was really this beautiful thing. And exciting.
The first half of the movie is breaking down this entire concert that
Yeah.
does happen. Like, it is full, almost
Yes.
like feature length right there. What was it like? Because you were collaborating with your dad a lot on this.
Yeah.
He's directing. I kind of wanted to talk through, were there moments where he was much more your dad than director, or were there times where he had to step in and be director more than a dad?
I mean, he really did both the
Yeah.
whole time. I mean, he's not really that different as a dad. Like at the dinner table, he's talking about the same things he'd be talking about on set, and his standards are high for his kids and the people that he works with. His artistic ideas. That's his core of who he is. He's a storyteller at home and at work. So I didn't feel like he was a different person, but it was funny to have like the dad-daughter thing there. So if we're like, you know, joking around on set and stuff like that. He's still my dad, and he'll like tease me and things like that. And he knows my insecurities, and he'll be like, "Stop doing that," and you know, like silly things like that. So it was nice to have that comfort.
This movie was bonded with you and your father because you bonded over music and like the power of music.
Yeah.
I bonded with my father over music as well. Were there any artists that your father introduced you to that influenced you?
Oh my gosh, so many. Like a lot of my influences come from him and just what he would play like in the car on the way to school. And I think my love for R&B music and jazz music comes from that. He would play Lauryn Hill, and he played a lot of hip hop music like Jay-Z. And yeah, I mean, he played Frank Sinatra, he played Etta James, you know, Nina Simone, Norah Jones, a lot of these artists that I feel like kind of seeped into myself and understanding of music. And so I still, you know, revert to those genres.
Something that you said last night when you were introducing the movie, I kind of loved it. It was that filmmaking in the 90s really held something important to you. And that's what you bonded with Josh over.
Yeah.
Wanted to learn from you, what is it about filmmaking in the 90s that captures something that we don't have today? So how was it better, and how is today better or worse?
You know, it's really where the industry, Hollywood, is geared for. And in the 90s, it wasn't kind of a lesser thing to go make original audience movies. And so everyone was bringing all of their skill sets, the best storytellers in the world, towards that goal. And to some extent, it's kind of bifurcated now because everything is kind of sequeled and things like that, that there's a kind of a machinery that's moving. And then if you want to make something that's, you know, high quality, you know, and personal, you go make your independent thing, and that's not really for the audience. That's for your own journey. And you know, I've always wanted to believe that you can do both, and I was taught that from the films that I grew up in, that you can do both, you know, that E.T. is brilliant cinematically and emotionally, and yet is a wonderful ride. And there's countless of movies throughout my childhood and all the way through the 90s where that was happening. And I think when I first came in, which was at the very end of the 90s, it was still the North Star of the industry. And so you had The Matrix and all of those movies that came out that were this.
Right. So you think it's a bit less risk, well, it's more risk adverse now, in a way?
And look, it's very costly to make movies now. I don't know if it's risk adverse. Maybe, you know, there's a safety in it, but bringing, taking huge, like for me, like Parasite would be an example. Like that's a movie from, that I would like from the 90s, incredibly entertaining, but at the highest level of craft. Like I would put that in that vein.
I love that movie, and it won for a reason.
Yes.
I was talking to Josh about what it's like being a father and having a lot of your passions bleed into how you raise your children. Yeah. And I was talking to your daughter about you being her musical influence for a lot of music. What do you feel like with your interests that you've sort of passed on? Because you're creating mini yous in a way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, no, I would, I was a big album guy, so I would say, hey, this album means a lot. This is a John Mayer album that I love, or a Radiohead album that I really love, and a Nirvana album, or The Doors, or whatever one. There's an album as an achievement that, and so they would learn from that, or more recent ones like Channel Orange, or 19 or 21, these albums that I'm like, these are exquisite artistic achievements from beginning to end. And they would, on vacation or in the car, I would be playing them these movements of an artist or a group that really were in the pocket.
I related to that because I did that with my father.
Oh, good.
It's just so wonderful seeing it in the movie as well. Something else I loved about this movie, usually you get this in heist movies as well, as the audience, you're rooting for the bad guy.
Yes.
And it's so uncomfortable, you've made it uncomfortable in this movie because you're so used to wanting the bad guy to win and to buck the system in a way.
Yes.
But you also anchor as a reminder that Josh is playing a very bad person.
Yes.
Was that intentional to kind of like have you on this, yay, no,
Exactly, like that whole kind of like, he's both the antagonist and the protagonist, and so as you're flipping between the two, and then the structure of the movie does that as well, kind of like you're with him, now you're not with him, now you're not supposed to be with him, and now you're terrified of him, now you're back with him, and so as you're doing that, it just felt really wonderful to kind of mess with format that way, and emotional format that way, and it's kind of the wink of the movie, which is, finally a serial killer you can root for. It's like,
But don't do that. Don't do that. You're wearing two different hats that are very important to you in this movie, director and dad. Were there any times where dad kind of took the wheel a little bit more in situations?
Dad only came up like at the end of the day, are you eating? Are you sleeping? You know, make sure you eat, you know, and the dad and relationship in our house dovetails so much with integrity of what you do in life and how you conduct yourself, and so that's still there. How do you face challenges and always run to the challenges? All of those things. So it was very natural to continue. It was very, for Saleka and I, it's just absolutely normal to what we were doing because that's the way we relate. We talk about, you know, where our writing didn't go well today. Well, why is that? And then, oh, you can trick yourself that you wrote today. Did you really write today? Or did you do everything else but write today, you know? And that we have those conversations. The same thing with, as we're doing, there's a pressure to the timetable, but we have talked about all the process involved to prep yourself for the Olympics, basically, of like, it's ready. You know, you have to be ready for that moment and in advance. And so they're trained in that way of, you know, and I believe in this statement that it's from a wonderful book, but, you know, talent is a process. That's what talent, when someone says you're talented, they're talking about your process.